bass line with your thumb and picking out a melody line with your fingers at the same time. I guess the best way to think of it is thinking of the guitar as being used to emulate a piano, where the left hand would be your thumb and the right hand would be your fingers picking out a melody line. And so that's what we did. And we, like I said, we played together for over 30 years. John passed away in 2009. And since then, I've gotten myself in all kinds of other musical predicaments, including one called House Party, which I'm really happy to be part of. That group consists of, there are four of us. My good friend Rick Franklin, who provides the Piedmont-style guitar, my good friend Marcus Moore on the violin, and myself on the harmonica, and we have the great fortune of having Junius Lee Brickhouse as a dancer with that group, because a lot of people don't realize Piedmont-style blues was originally dance music, and it's been kind of one of my goals to reconnect the dance with the dance music, and so that's what we'll be presenting, and we'll be in Raleigh on Saturday, the 26th.
And do you know what location you're going to be at in Raleigh? If not, I can look it up. But
yes, it's okay. So I saw some kind of opera house thing, but the name I have here is Duke Energy Center for the Performing Arts.
Yeah, that's it. That's actually a very popular venue, so I think that you'll really enjoy that venue. And of course, Pinecone does a great job of promoting all kinds of traditional music, not just Piedmont blues, but they've done folk music and various other kinds of sounds as well. So they are definitely about supporting very roots kind of music and everything. It's interesting that you mentioned the dance element of the blues music, because you're right, Durham was very much a part of the house party scenes, and people would have these parties after work, after they had done the factories and all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of times people now associate, when they think of blues and dance, they think more of the kind of soul blues that's out there as well. And I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing, but people can dance to the more traditional sounds as well. But I know a lot of times people will think about like the electric side and things that they can hear more from that southern soul kind of form of blues, because there's so many different forms of blues that have come out of the South, and a lot of the southern soul is also a dance form of music. But I'm a fan of any music to get folks' feet tapping and their bodies moving, and there's no doubt that that's what happened both historically and even currently with the Piedmont sound.
That's right. I mean, John and I over my playing career, we did a lot, mostly, concert halls. Every once in a while we would do a bar or a club, but very rarely were we presented in a place where there were people up and dancing. Now, see, John, I guess you could say he was kind of almost like a generation older than me, and he actually came up during the heyday of the house parties. I mean, that is where he learned his music. That is where he honed his craft. Where in a party where people were, dancing and talking and laughing and eating and playing cards and fighting and everything. And so he had that very strong sense of rhythm, where on an acoustic guitar you were still motivated to get up off your butt and dance, just as much as now, bass and drums and guitar will inspire people. John could inspire people with his thumb, in the same way to get up and move. So, and that's I was fortunate to be in some of those house parties and in that setting and to learn in that setting, and mainly to be taught by people who came up in that setting. So.
And yeah, it's great when we can be taught by the masters, particularly those that have actually learned from that kind of situation and everything. Now, you, I understand, are also in the process of either have written a book or are writing a book about your experience of being a blues musician and kind of growing up into the blues, into now being, I would consider you an elder statesman of the blues now in this current generation and everything. So tell us a little bit about the book as well.
Okay. Well, the book, I have a good friend of mine who's actually from Germany that I've known for over 30 years, and we probably about 8 years ago now reconnected, and we collaborated on a book, and the book really is Well, the book started out to be just an overall overview of the acoustic blues scene in Washington, D.C. from 1974 to the present. And as we were working, the book kind of evolved and morphed into being more, my story of that period of time, and the scene as I was aware of it, and the people that I got to know, and the people that I had the good fortune to perform with and to learn from, and all that. And the book is done, and we actually have a publisher, and we're working out the contract now. So I'm not sure how soon it will be out, but it's definitely coming out sometime this year. As soon as we can work out the contract and all. We were fortunate that the first publisher that we reached out to, which is probably one of the best publishers for books about blues, and one of the most demanding publishers, and they accepted us. So we're feeling pretty good about that.
Sounds great. And what's the title of the book again?
The book is called Sweet Bitter Blues. And
I'm
we got that title.
Yeah, go ahead. You got that title how? No, you got that title how?
The title is the name of a poem that a good friend of ours, Otis Williams, he passed on now, but he was a professor at University of Maryland, and he started the Yamburu Culture Center at the University of Maryland, probably right in the mid-'70s, and it was a great organization that he started basically to help the black students to just find their footing and to support anything they might need. But he considered himself a griot. He was a beautiful poet, and he wrote this song, Sweet Bitter Blues. And then my partner John Cephas, put it to music, and it was one of our mainstays in our repertoire for many years, and so we chose that as the title of the book.
Well, I've actually had a chance to see y'all perform a couple of times because I work at the Hayti Heritage Center, among other jobs that I have, and of course they put on the big Bull Durham Blues Festival on a regular basis. Been moved away from the ballpark and more in the inside venue right now over the last several years, but definitely I remember y'all coming down and doing various performances at that festival. As a matter of fact, we still have some of the posters that have the name Cephas and Wiggins on them as part of the lineup. So I definitely know that you always give a great show. So I know that folks, when they get there this weekend to the Raleigh show, they will have an amazing time hearing you and the other performers. I'm imagining that the D.C. blues scene has got to be a very interesting blues scene because a lot of times blues music is inspired by what's going on in wherever the city is. And, of course, you're in the middle of, like I said, the madhouse with D.C. and everything. So how does what's going on in your environment impact the music that you create?
Well, it definitely it impacts my music. I've been making songs, in the course of the 30 some odd years that John and I played together. A lot of people didn't know that I was constantly writing songs. And, of course, right now, unfortunately, we have a lot of inspiration to make songs, about the current situation. I can say I was just in 2017. I was awarded the National Heritage Fellowship, and I remember so for that award they put on a big show, a big event, featuring the Heritage Fellows. And I was leaving my house to go to the rehearsal, and I checked my mailbox on my way out, and I found a letter of congratulations signed by the current occupant of the White House, and that definitely inspired me to make a couple of songs. You write about what you know. A lot of people think that these traditional blues are frozen in time, but it's not. It's a living tradition and a growing tradition, and what's happening now definitely is fuel for songs.
So can you share any of the new songs that you've written that might be inspired by what's going on? If you can think of any titles that you might have written that are inspired by what's happening currently?
Well, the one that I'm singing currently, it's a song called Ebo Landing, and it's got three verses, and the first verse is the one that deals with the subject of Ebo Landing. I don't know if you're familiar with that location. I happen to have good friends, Frank and Doug Quimby, who were the Georgia Sea Island singers, and they live down there at St. Solomon's Island on the Outer Banks. Mm-hmm. And there's a place down there where during the time of the slave trade of enslaved, buying and selling enslaved people, and where a ship came up on the Atlantic and they offloaded a bunch of enslaved people, and they took them up this place called Dunbar Creek. And when the Africans on that boat going up Dunbar Creek, as they arrived at their destination and they saw the market where they would, selling African people, they decided rather than to face that fate that they would all, jump overboard. And they were all chained together, and they jumped overboard there, and they all drowned. And then after that, they named that place Ebo Landing. And the reason I thought about that in the context of the election cycle that was going on was there was a lot of really ridiculous, stupid statements being made about immigration and how people arrived on this continent. I mean, just unbelievably, it's 2 steps forward and 25 steps leaps back, kind of stuff, where I felt like I was needing to state the obvious to people who should. So anyway, that discussion is what inspired me to put that verse in. And then, so let's see, the chorus says, the chorus of that song says, "And now you say you want your country back to make the greatest nation great again. Well, I've heard that there have been some good old days, but I don't know where or remember when." And so,
yeah, definitely some powerful messages right there that folks need to be listening to on a regular basis. I know I'm a big fan of any of those songs that definitely address issues and talk about what's going on in the world, or it could be even issues about sexism or issues about racism and things of that nature, because I've always been a big fan, and I know the blues has definitely done that, but I've known that I'm thinking about like some of the songs that Shamika Copeland has done, even some of the older artists that have passed on would have songs that mention that and some issue that they would address in their songs. And, in my mind, to some degree, he was labeled as a poet, but I consider Gil Scott-Heron, who's definitely a message person, to be also kind of a blues singer as well, because if you listen to what his songs were about, they were definitely blues artists. I mean, blues related. So I don't know that everybody puts him in that category, because a lot of times when they think of the blues, they think of the obvious blues artists like Buddy Guy, B.B. King, and people of that, Jimmy Walker, but people of that nature. They don't necessarily remember, or Junior Wells, they don't necessarily remember that there are other folks like Richie Havens and Gil Scott that they might try to stick in the folk category. But I think if you listen to their lyrics, the lyrics are very much blues driven.
That's true, and I think there are a lot of younger blues musicians now that are using that form to make powerful statements about what's going on, and about more than just my baby done me wrong, and expressing some really good and uplifting messages. So
now, one of the things one of the things that I know came out of, you mentioned the young people. I know it came out of D.C. to some degree, and definitely out of New York, definitely out of New Orleans. But there's been this kind of movement, I think, over the last couple of years, where some of these young musicians are mixing up the art forms. Because I know that even when I talk to some of the folks here I'm in my 50s, but they're like in their 30s and their 20s, they see the pictures of the old greats of blues and even old greats of R&B, and they'll be like, that they can't relate to those. But then I bring up the fact to them that there are blues artists out there that actually incorporate some of what they like. Like they might incorporate R&B, and they might incorporate hip hop with like the blues sound. I remember that Little Brian did that with Zydeco, and I remember Chris Ardoin did that to some degree. So I was just wondering, as a advocate